Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and wow, what a game week. It started off somewhat terribly with Rodri getting sent off in the 46th minute for overreacting to something that seemed to be nothing. I have no idea how he's lost the plot there. But his red card saw Pep make a couple of substitutions early into the second half to try and protect the 2-0 lead, which saw Alvarez being subbed off and my hopes of him repaying my 4-point hit for the game week. However, I ended up scoring 98 points with the -4 hit, giving me a net positive 94 points, which took me from 275k at the start of game week 6 all the way up to 56k overall. So Johnston managed to keep a clean sheet, got about 5 saves in the match and earned 1 bonus point. Estupinan lost the clean sheet, but still managed to pick up an assist to come away with 6, as he must have got a bonus as well. You got a bonus for that assist. Last week's purchase of Botman, who got 9 points last week, getting all 3 bonus with the clean sheet, has gone even better this week. So I managed to watch the Spurs game. I had the Liverpool game off to the side. The Spurs game kicked off at like 2 a.m. New Zealand time on Monday morning. And then I stayed up to watch the Newcastle game, which kicked off at 4:30 as well. So I was already on a pretty high buzz, having just watched the Spurs game with Maddison assisting Son twice. So in the 2 goals that Spurs scored, both Maddison and Son were involved in both of those returns, somewhat silencing all the people who were calling Son a knee-jerk buy because he was about to run into Arsenal and Liverpool. But as I've said, Son is a pretty dynamic player. He's multi-footed. He scored a goal with his left foot and with his right foot at the weekend. And he just looks like he has nailed down that number 9 spot. I do know that some people were still predicting that Richarlison was going to start against Arsenal at the weekend, which I have no idea how they are managing to arrive at that conclusion. Son was pretty much always going to start that, given what Postecoglou had done in the lead up to the North London derby fixture. But anyway, I was watching the Newcastle game and watched Botman score a header goal, which I was basically in disbelief watching that. And then what was it, about 5-10 minutes later or whatever it was, it felt very, very soon after, my new purchase this week of Dan Burn, who I only bought for clean sheets. I did not buy him for any attacking threat whatsoever. But Burn scored the first goal, sorry. He managed to get the header off the corner, which I was in disbelief about, as I just bought him this week. But then Botman goes and scores the next goal from a set piece, which wasn't a corner. Great finish to glance it down far post to get it in past the diving keeper. I was in a different world in the middle of the morning on Monday morning. So this week's purchase of Dan Burn picked up 12. Botman with 12 points. Across the middle of the park we had Mbumo with the 1-pointer. Maddison with both assists. He was pulled off a little bit early. It was actually pulled off at the same time as Son in that match. Maddison, I think, was pulled off as a bit of a precaution because he did look to injure that, well, not injure the knee, but he took a knock to the knee. Knees are really quite a different type of muscle. When you do take a knock to the knee, it can be very jarring and quite hard to run off. He didn't look too uncomfortable as he was running around on the pitch, but given it was such a big game, Postecoglou pulled him off just to make sure that he didn't end up costing Spurs the 1 point. And Son coming off at about the 75-minute mark as well. Looks like a trend that is set to continue, with Postecoglou bringing on Richarlison up front in that number 9 position to see if he can get any sort of momentum moving with him. I think Richarlison was largely ineffective in this match, which was probably going to show Postecoglou very clearly that Richarlison is not quite up to these big matches. So it will be interesting to see whether or not Son gets the full 90 minutes this weekend against Liverpool or not, but we will have to wait and see. Saka, in the same match, managed to take a shot that was off target, heading into Romero, which deflected into the goal to earn him an assist as opposed to the goal, as the own goal was rewarded, I don't know if that's the right word, but awarded to Romero. And then it was also Romero who gave away the penalty, which Saka stood up to take and sunk. Salah also earned the first penalty in the match, stepped up to take it and absolutely cleaned the leather off the football as he slammed the ball home in a pretty ferocious penalty. But with just the one goal scored, he still managed to pick up all 3 bonus points, which is actually quite rare for Salah, historically speaking. And that's usually because he takes quite a lot of shots, and a lot of those shots do happen to be off target. But he has picked up a little bit of a different role in this Liverpool team, and he is creating some very big opportunities for his teammates, which is what is boosting him up the bonus point system charts, which is helping him pull in more points than usual with only the one goal. Quite often you see Salah score one goal and he'd only come away with a 7 or 8 pointer, depending on whether or not they get the clean sheet. But great to see him back in the bonus. Julian Alvarez was my hit that I brought in for the week. Did not expect him to get Rodri'd. That was pretty unlucky, but I fully understand what Pep was doing there, and I'm still quite happy with the hit, which I will talk about in a second. Haaland, captain, scored the header. There was no one that was going to be captain other than Haaland. It could have been telephone numbers in that City match, but before we go into that, if you're not already a subscriber to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really does help the channel out, and if you do enjoy the following content, hit that like button because it does really help me out. So, was the hit for Julian Alvarez worth it? Now, looking at a one-pointer on screen, many people were going, oh, why did you take that hit? But first of all, we got ridiculously unlucky that that City went down to 10 men and Alvarez was in fact subbed off. I thought he was going to survive, as Doku was the first man that was brought off as Pep looked to shore up the defence to protect that 2-0 lead. But it wasn't quite enough, as Alvarez was also subbed off about 5-10 minutes later to dash his hopes. He came off before the 60-minute mark, only earning the 1 pointer. Now, Man City in that first half were dominating. They had 77% of the possession in the first half, and Forest looked almost out on their feet, as most of the midfield were basically just doing shuttles for 45 minutes as they moved side to side to try and shut down the City attack. That second half could have been an absolute whitewash. There could have been goals galore in that second half if City managed to hold on to the 11 men on the pitch. As it so happens, with the 10 men, that position stat completely reversed in the second half, with Nottingham Forest coming away with 75% of the possession in the second half, with City playing with 10 men. So the The purchase, I think, was accurate. City were absolutely dominating. They were bound to score more goals in that second half. Whether or not Alvarez was going to get involved is anybody's guess, but with the amount of possession that they had and how tired Forest looked at the end of that first half, there was certainly going to be goals in that second half, and Alvarez was well placed to be involved. Now, the reason that I actually went forward to take the hit, now I took this hit last week, I think it was about Wednesday New Zealand time. It was straight after the Champions League match where I watched Alvarez just be involved in absolutely everything that City were doing, and he was at 6.8 million. I had 0.1 million in the bank in order to go from Pedro up to Alvarez, but I predicted that Alvarez was either going to be 7 million by deadline, which would have priced him out, I would have been priced out of the move, or that Alvarez was going to go up to 7 million as the games were being played across the weekend. Now, as predicted, he did reach 7 million. It was straight after the first day's game of play, and would have priced me out of that move, which meant I would have had to take a hit for Alvarez this week in order to fund the move. So, by acting early last week, I saved 0.2 million by bringing him in at 6.8 million. I still have the 0.1 million in the bank. So, saved the 0.2 million. I've also earned the 0.2 million rise in value. So my sale price on Alvarez is now 6.9 million. And I already have him locked in for this really nice fixture this weekend against Wolves away. So yes, I think that this hit is totally worth the 4-point spend, even though he's only come away with 1 point. I've effectively saved a future transfer. I'm probably going to end up rolling this week, assuming that Maddison is fit and ready to play. And even if he isn't fit and ready to play, I may just instead play Kabore off the bench. This is still a bust team, by the way. I am not entirely sure. Sorry, not a bust team. I haven't really changed this around. This is still the same team that played on the weekend. I'm not sure if I'm going to play at Kabore over a Stupinan or not. I need to have a little bit of a think about that before the weekend, and I'll probably release another video for team selection a little bit later in the week. But I thought I'd try and get this video out quickly, as I am due to go off to a birthday lunch in about 20 minutes or so. So hopefully we get through this quick enough. So yes, the hit I think was totally worth it. Alvarez, I think, is going to be one of those essential players in the City squad who is nailed on, is going to be playing 90 minutes week on week, assuming that City don't pick up any more red cards. And crucial players. Rodri is probably the cement in that midfield that holds the whole City system together. I think Calvin Phillips did fine when he came on, by the way. He will almost certainly start at the weekend, and I think we'll see the same team roll out with just Phillips in place of Rodri. But yeah, just to wrap up on the hit, I think that was totally worth it. Now that hit, that 4 points, I did check the difference. If I didn't take the hit, I would be ranked at about 32k as of right now, but I would be looking to take a hit this week to bring Alvarez in anyway. And I'm not entirely sure where I would have got the funds from. It probably would have been a Johnston down to Areola to eke out a little bit of funds in order to get Alvarez in. But I'm more than happy to hold on to Johnston for the foreseeable until he either gets benched because of the other goalkeeper that Crystal Palace have bought in Dean Henderson, or until I wildcard. I don't see... Johnston had an amazing match for Crystal Palace, by the way. Some of those saves were unreal. He does not look set to lose his spot anytime soon, and so if you are a Johnston and Turner owner, I would not be too worried about Johnston as of right yet. I think he's still set to hold on to his place. So next on the list is Ben Chilwell. Now, last week in the video, I did a bit of a spiel on previous predictions coming true. Now, I did make a bit of a crystal ball prediction in my video last week, which was titled Ben Chilwell Has to Go, in which I covered why I thought Chilwell would probably be benched at the weekend just gone, which is why I ended up selling Ben Chilwell for Dan Burn, which was a huge swing in terms of rank gain. But I do have to pull up on the fact that anyone that is new to this channel, I did predict the Ben Chilwell benching, and that has in fact come true. So please hit that like button on this video to help this information get out to the rest of the community. So up until the benching in Game Week 5, I had zero plans to sell Ben Chilwell, but it was the tactical change that Pochettino made that indicated that Chilwell was no longer first choice. Now, the one thing that was quite surprising in the Chelsea match was when Chilwell did come on, he came on at about the 60-odd minute mark, and he was in fact subbed on for Mudryk at left wing. So I was a little bit unsure as to where Pochettino was seeing Ben Chilwell in the team, because in the game prior, where Chilwell was benched, when he came on late in that game, it was actually for Colwill at left back. So there was a little bit of uncertainty as to whether or not Chilwell was going to be playing left back or left wing. The main reason that I did have Chilwell in the squad was the fact that he was playing out of position and was getting very close to goal, which meant that his chances for earning FPL points were greatly increased by that positional change. But it does look like that Pochettino is looking to persist with Chilwell in at that left wing spot in a rotation with Mudryk. However, even if Chilwell is still preferred at left wing, I still think he has to be sold, and the reasons for that is because he is a defender. Now, people who have been following along with the channel for a little while will be aware that I held on to João Pedro for the first 5 weeks through all of his rotation, and I was quite happy to do so. But the minute that I saw Chilwell as a rotation threat, I sold him instantly. And the reason for that is attackers, especially attackers that are on penalties when they are on the pitch, have a much better shot at scoring goals and coming away with attacking returns in a short run of minutes. So they come on at like the 60 to 70 to 80 minute mark at the end of the game against tired legs. They still do have a relatively good shot of pulling in points if they are playing in a very attacking team, and a team like Brighton where they just grind down their opposition. It's very tired legs at the end of the game, and so someone like a João Pedro can come on and come away with points like he did in Game Week 5. But Ben Chilwell, listed as a defender, he can only secure clean sheet points if he is on the pitch for 60 minutes. Now, if he starts on the bench, the likelihood of him being subbed on in the first half before the 30-minute mark in order for him to be on the pitch for 60 minutes to pick up a clean sheet is highly unlikely. The only reason that would happen is if there is an injury or potentially a red card. In the red card situation, you would not want that happening anyway, but it would have to be an injury to a player in which Ben Chilwell can be subbed on for. So if Chilwell starts on the bench, it is very unlikely that he'll come on with enough time to get enough minutes under his belt in order to pick up that clean sheet. Looks like he's still going to be playing at left wing though, if he does come onto the pitch. It looks like Colwill has secured down that left back spot, so he could be close enough to goal in order to pull away with the points. But the fact that he has been used in both positions does make it a little bit more worrying, because he could be subbed on in a defender position, which would see him way further away from goal, and his chances of earning any sort of FPL points are severely hindered. So, if you still hold Ben Chilwell, even though there is a potential that he starts this weekend because Gusto was red carded in the match, is going to be serving a 2-game ban, and Reece James is still injured, so Chilwell could get a start this weekend. However, Pochettino could just as easily change the system altogether in order to not play Chilwell. It's going to be interesting to see who he chucks on at right back, because I don't think he actually has any sort of out-and-out right back in the team that he will put there, and so that may in fact warrant a change in formation. So I think he's still a hard sell if you own him. However, I can understand holding onto him this weekend if you have someone like a Gusto or a Nicholas Jackson still floating around in your squads. Now, the other point that I'm going to go through in this video is important considerations in planning for Salah. So, pre-season, I did say that one of the reasons that I was starting with Salah is I thought that he would be able to, the combination of him and Pedro would be able to outscore any other 2 players that I did not own. That seems to have come to fruition, which is great to see. But I also predicted that about game week 4 or game week 5 is when all the Salah-less teams would start to get very worried about not owning Salah, as Liverpool's fixture run coming up is looking very good. And the fact that Salah has just been scoring points week on week is definitely going to be turning the heads of many FPL managers out there. So he has not blanked all season. He's got 5 points, 5 points, 5 points, 8 points, 10 points, 10 points in the first 6 game weeks of the season, fully justifying the 12.5 million price point that he is at, although he is almost going up to 12.6. Doesn't look like it's ticked over yet, but he looks like he is set to rise. And this prediction looks to have come true, as there is a lot of chatter in the community about how to get Salah into your teams. Now, depending on your team structure, Salah could be managed into your team through maybe 3 or probably 4 transfers over the coming weeks, and so a hit may be worth it in order to save your wild card, to delay that wild card to be used as close to game week 20 as possible. Now that is my plan for my wild card. I'm going to delay it out to as close to game week 20 as I possibly can, because at that point we will have much more information about any of the future blanks and doubles that will be coming up. Should be able to set my team up to hopefully make the best use of how the fixtures will lay in game weeks 20. And so if you can get Salah into your teams with only taking a hit or 2, that may be well worth the hit in order to save your wild card. However, if your team is in disarray, it is probably worthwhile fixing everything in your squad with a wild card in order to bring Salah in, as we now have 6 weeks worth of information and we have a very clear idea of who's starting, who's first choice, who's performing, which players are highly owned and which players are not. You can jump onto a team that's probably relatively similar to the kind of structure that I have set up, and that may be the best way to getting Salah into your squads. Now, if you are planning to do it with manual transfers, you need to be incredibly careful on who you sell in order to put Salah in. Now, I have seen some recommendations out there of managers saying that they are probably going to sell someone like Saka to bring Salah in, and the reason for that is purely down to fixture run. Now, Saka has a great fixture away to Bournemouth this week. Then he's at home to Man City, which is the hardest game he's going to have. Well, it would have been a bit harder if it was an away game, I suppose, but Man City are looking ferocious. Followed by Chelsea, which looks like a tough game on paper, but is not going to be a very tough game for Arsenal at all, I do not think. Then Sheffield United, and then Newcastle away, and that Newcastle away game will be quite tough for Arsenal. And so it is largely the fixtures that is driving this recommendation. However, I would 100% not recommend selling Saka in order for him to be the make way to bring Salah into your squad. Now, Saka is owned by 66% now of all managers in the game. However, at my old rank going into game week 6, which was ranked at 275k, Saka was owned by 85% of all managers. That's huge. And more importantly, in the top 25k of all managers, so all the managers that are sitting in the top 25,000, well, in the ranks of 25,000 or left, he is also owned by 85% of all managers. And so if he does something like he did this weekend, where he scored a goal and an assist in what looked to be a tough fixture on paper, that is going to be a huge rank hit for any managers who do not own Saka, or some of those managers who actually benched Saka this weekend, which I do not understand at all. The North London derby is always full of goals. It's always a really entertaining, open, end-to-end fixture. And I'm sure all those people who benched Saka are probably ruining the decision at the moment, but that would have been a huge rank drop for this game week. And it is these ownership levels that you do very much have to keep an eye on in order to decide who is the best make way. Now, if you own either of the United lads, you 100% need to sell them for Salah if you are without Salah. This is United, right? So I'm a United supporter. I've been watching them all season, and they are still being held by a lot of pretty good FPL managers, which is very surprising to me. I can only assume that these people are not watching United play very often. Maybe they're only watching the highlights or some extended highlights or match of the day or whatever, in which United would probably look okay from a highlights perspective. I know that Bruno and Rashford are still sitting very high on the stats charts for all you stats junkies out there, but there is much more to football than just expected stats. Now, in order to do well in FPL, you need to own good players from good teams. Now, this is quite often spoken about amongst many content creators, but there is a last part to that statement that is often left off. You need good players from good teams who are playing good football, and United are playing terribly, and they have been all season. We just played Burnley away. Burnley will struggle to stay in the Premier League this season. They will be way down there in some sort of relegation battle by the end of the year, and yet we only managed to beat them 1-0. I don't care what the expected stats say. If you watched that match, United they're not playing good football. There's lots of mistakes throughout the build-up play. All of these little wayward passes and bad decisions and poor touches just mount up during a game of football. And when it comes to those clutch moments where you need to strike that perfect shot or lay off a killer pass in order to put your teammate in, the compounding nature of how you've actually been playing in that game definitely weighs on the players in the team. And the fact that there's all this extra off the field stuff going on definitely does not help those professional footballers. Now, the reason I say professional footballers is people will say, but they are professionals. They shouldn't let that affect them. That is true, but they are also human, and it is the top 3 inches of a footballer that are the most important. And if you watch the football that United are playing, the top 3 inches is just not there for the majority of the players. So if you're still holding on to Rashford and Bruno, they are 100% hard sales for me, and the players that should be making way in order to get Salah into your squads if you do not already own him. So that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's alright too. I appreciate you watching. Cheers.